Now for business updates across the globe, Rochus Odiri joins us. Good morning, Rochus.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning to all our viewers. We'll kick things off with the Asian markets, bearish to start the day because we are still getting yet more and more weak economic data coming out of China. Korea is on holiday. They have their public holiday day. They're celebrating Liberation Day over in Korea. But this is the latest data coming out this morning from the People's Republic. Industrial production, July 3.7, the forecast was for 4.3, June was 4.4, so it underperformed as far as industrial production is concerned, output. Retail sales, and this is, if you see the fact that China is in a deflationary territory and prices are falling, it stands to reason that people will spend less money because they're expecting prices to continue to fall. So July 2.5%, your forecast was 4%, June 3.1, retail sales massively underperformed over in China. Your fixed asset investments, which is linked to the property sector, which has been under a lot of pressure. You saw 3.4% July, underperforming the forecast and underperforming June as well. Very interesting, the jobless rates, it ticked up 5.3%. The forecast was for 5.2. It was the same. But you can see property investment year to date in the negative region. China, interesting, if you look at China, the fact that they're still under pressure, they cut their benchmark interest rates today by about 15 basis points or so, one of the biggest cuts that we've seen. But it didn't really move the markets. The markets were still fell. It's their biggest rate cut since 2020. They're also considering removing stamp duties in order to boost their stocks. But this is the key thing from coming out of today. They are no longer publishing youth unemployment data. That is for, I think, 16 to 35-year-olds or so. June youth unemployment was at 21.3%, far higher than the jobless rate for the full population. So they said that they are going to retool how they put that data together. China is in some dire straits right now. Japan, on the other hand, beating expectations really well with their second quarter growth. Why? Because the yen is so weak. And if you are a productive economy, we'll come to Nigeria in a second, your weaker currency boosts your exports. So it was mostly cars, Japanese vehicles. We know that famous Japanese brand with a T that the Abia governor, anyway. So Q2 GDP 6% year on year. Forecast was for 3.1%. First quarter GDP was 2.7. So again, but this was mostly export-led growth for Japan. I think we come to India next. Inflation climbing to a 15-month high in India, 7.4%. July estimate was 6.4. June 4.8. It was mostly vegetables, milk, food categories that pushed India's inflation upwards. So we're seeing, different stories from the emerging markets as far as the emerging markets are concerned for inflation. We come to UK. This data was just released this morning, and the Bank of England is still under pressure. Jobs data in the United Kingdom for the second quarter, unemployment 4.2%, climbing by about 30 basis points or so. But the key is that number, these two numbers, wage growth, 7.8% year-on-year growth. The estimate was 7.3. If you include bonuses, it's 8.2%. This is going to keep Bank of England and Andrew Bailey up at night, because if your wages are still climbing, you know that there's been a number of strikes in the UK. People have been ambling for, unions have been asking for higher pay. Rishi Sunak had to give in. He's got an election next year. They've repriced wages upward. If you keep increasing wages, and this is another lesson for us to note in Nigeria with the discussion around minimum wage, which I support. The minimum wage should increase, but if productivity doesn't match that, you're going to see more money chasing fewer goods. So the Bank of England is likely to hike rates again at their next meeting. I think it's going to be next month, September, when they meet. So wages are still climbing. So wage inflation in the UK, that is still going up as well. Russia is calling an emergency meeting today, I think about 10:30 a.m. It's an emergency meeting for the central bank. Why? Because the ruble is falling. It's year to date, it's down about 27%, pushing 30%. Their benchmark rate, they increased it just last month to 8.5. The currency is at a 16-month low. I mean, you're fighting a war, you're spending a lot of money, you also have a lot of restrictions and sanctions that are hitting you left and right. Your currency is going to suffer. So I think they're going to probably hike their benchmark rates again. We'll get that information about 10:30 or 11 o'clock UK, 11 o'clock our time. Argentina, this is a really interesting story. There was a primary vote yesterday. Their presidential elections are in October. This gentleman, and I picked this picture because the guy is a right-wing libertarian, Javier Milei. He has promised to burn the Central Bank of Argentina down to the ground. Those are his words. He's also promised to dollarize Argentina's economy. He has lost complete faith in the Argentina peso. The moment he won by the primary vote by 30%. He's an outsider, right? About 30% of the votes. The central bank immediately devalued the peso by 18% to 350. They also hiked their benchmark rate to 118%. Argentina, I think, has the third or fourth highest inflation in the world. The people of Lionel Messi have lost complete faith in their leadership. They've got skyrocketing inflation. The peso doesn't mean anything. They've lost purchasing power. Interest rates are really high. So it's almost like the Donald Trump thing we saw after Obama was elected. They have just gone to the most radical person that they're looking for, who has just said he was going to just burn the entire system down. Now, maybe, you campaign in, is it poetry and govern in prose? The legislature in Argentina is pretty mixed, so he's not going to be able to just push through any of these radical initiatives that he wants to push through if he wins. But everybody should please watch Argentina, because if he does win in October, we watch that election in October, there's going to be fireworks and it's going to be very, very interesting. And he's an economist, and apparently he has like 5 dogs that he named after right-wing economists like Milton Fried. So look out for Javier Milei. He's a very, very interesting guy, and what's going on in Argentina are very interesting. More interesting news, Kenya has reinstated fuel subsidies. So the energy regulator just yesterday announced that. No, but see, what happened here was that they basically said, look, we've been saying this since, I've been talking about oil prices. Oil prices have been climbing, and as a result of that, fuel prices are moving up. Now, William Ruto they removed fuel subsidies when he came into office. Fuel subsidies have been removed in Kenya for a number of months, but the price pressure has been immense. So the energy regulator came out and announced, I said we should do this here in Nigeria, where at least somebody should give them forward guidance and said prices are not going to be increased. Now, where did this money come from? I've been talking to analysts in Kenya that we interview on Global Business Report. Some have said they moved some of the money from property taxes. Again, this is how taxes help. They moved some money from property taxes, probably to cushion the subsidies, or Kenya has been getting money from the IMF. So the IMF likely may not like this, because their reasons, or rather the conditions they gave them, were not to include subsidies. But for now, at least for this month, with oil prices rising, they have tried to cushion that. So we're going to be talking to a member of IPMAN and the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria later today. Fuel prices in Nigeria, they're saying it could go to 720. So Nigeria now, here's Mr. Shonobi.
I think Russia just hiked rates.
Okay, so yeah, that's
checking on the
okay. So
the
was
Russian central bank just hiked rate by 350 basis points to 12% in an extraordinary meeting.
Well, there you go. So that's the meeting we just talked about. News. That's the meeting we just talked about a few seconds ago. So here is Mr. Shonobi, the acting governor of Nigeria. Now we get to Nigeria.
Was very concerned, or is very, very concerned about some of the goings on in the foreign exchange market. And one of the things we discussed were what could be done to stabilize and what could be done to improve the liquidity in the market and also the goings on in the various other markets, including the parallel market. He is concerned about its impact on the average person, since unfortunately a lot of activities that we do which are purely local are still referenced to exchange rates in the parallel market. We've discussed, and I've shared with him what we're doing to improve supply. If you look at the official market, you'll find that that market has been fairly stable, and the spreads or the difference have not fluctuated as much. We do not believe that the changes going on in the parallel market are driven by pure economic demand and supply, but are topped by speculative demand from people. Some of the plans and strategies which I'm not at liberty to share with you mean sooner rather than later the speculators should be careful, because we believe the things we're doing, when they come to fruition, may result in significant losses to them. But my presence here is more about the concerns the president has and his need to know that we are doing something about it, assurances of which I have given him totally. So I hope this helps. We're looking at it, and we're doing things which will significantly impact the market in a few days' time, and we will all see it. The intention is to ensure the environment operates at a level that's more efficient, but also that is also very reasonable and does not have a negative impact to the best that we can on the lives of the average person.
All right, look, there's a lot to unpack here, right? The Central Bank of Nigeria is still doing this thing where they are creating a boogeyman, somebody to distract people and say this is the person that is causing the problems that we're having.
It's the diaspora this time.
Yeah, it was diaspora. Now he's saying that it's speculators, and he's saying that the price movements in the parallel market are not because of demand and supply. Thank you. They did this with Abuki FX. They always create. Look, the central bank's policy, the 41-item list, drove demand to the parallel market. You drove demand there because you didn't allow them access to the window, the official window, because you don't have the supply. So where it's like pouring water into two sinks and you block one sink, it will flow into the other one. You caused that. And so, and considering the fact that Eurobonds sold off yesterday. Foreign investors were selling off Nigerian Eurobonds. The yield went up because the price was dropping because they were selling off because of the financials that were released from the CBN. So and you would think you would come out and say, okay, look, this is what we're going to do to assure the markets. Just tell the market, we're not children. Talk to us as adults and tell us what you're going. It's supply. You don't have the supply, so don't create a boogeyman or anything like that. And then I want really one more quick thing here. Okay. Let the FX market breathe. I have some suggestions here, right? We keep talking about letting the poor breathe, right? Very quickly, sell your FAC dollars into the INE window. There's a thing the central bank does where they take the oil proceeds, FX, create new Naira and distribute it to the government. 2, IOC should be allowed to sell FX to banks. One of the asset management houses wrote a newsletter about 3 or 4 weeks ago that one of the oil majors, we won't mention them, attempted to sell.
And the central bank stopped it.
They stopped it. And the central bank said, they said we sell it to us, which means it wants to control the price, right? Lift restrictions on the PSBs, that's the payment serving bank licenses that you have. They are not allowing telcos to basically hold on to FX. You might want to liberalize that. And then finally, there's a tweet from Ian Aboeji, co-founder of Andela, also one of the execs at Flutterwave. Says it's easy to see the problem with the FX rates. I will probably get shot for saying this, but banks are buying cheap dollars on INE and pushing demand to the black market for arbitrage. Today, only banks trading INE this is the bottom part, give licensed fintechs access to the INE and watch rates collapse like a pack of cards. The central bank has to move out of the way and liberalize the market and let other people sell into it. At least for now, anyway.
Today, I hate triumphalism, but it's out there. We said it, that this central bank will not be able to manage this float. It was crystal clear. At first, you have a float, you have nothing to defend. Secondly, totally clueless. Thirdly, no policy direction. The same central bank that say, no, people should sell to the INE window. Rotus, that company is on the tip of my lip, but I can't mention their name.
It begins with a C.
When that company, that oil company, wanted to go out there and sell to the banks, you central bank said, oh, give us that money.
So they can control the price.
So they can control the price. So you are saying now that the speculators are going to see shege. What do you have to show the speculators shege? Is it by blaming the foreign, the diaspora remittances? And saying all sorts of things around voodoo economics? We said it. So I think the best bets, couple of the suggestions you've given, Rotus. Most importantly, I think one other thing you should add to that suggestion is go and look for money anyway and start defending. If you are going to borrow concessionary loan, let's talk to Saudi Arabia, let's talk to Morocco. We need to be able to hedge this madness going on. This should not continue this way because everybody's on his knees as we speak. And it is obvious that the Economic Intelligence Unit was right. They saw through all of this. And other policies we have also made. Let's think through them. We can see how the price of petrol is now being passed on to citizens. How they can't even buy it as we speak. You see what Kenya has done. You see, when I said these things initially, a lot of people think, I didn't want free market economy. My plea is that the Nigerian dynamics is different. Please, I understand neoclassical economic thoughts. But it doesn't work in an over-dollarized economy with massive level of corruption, constant policy somersaults. and headless thinking. It doesn't work. And please, the sad reality is that most African countries follow down that band of a lot of headless thinking, massive policy somersaults, highly dollarized economy, and lack of understanding and outlook. And it has come home to roost.
All right, very quickly, just to say that with Ian, I thought Ian's tweet, I saw it as well, was very interesting, especially the aspect where he speaks about fintechs coming in as players and just watching it. It would be great to explore that if the Central Bank of Nigeria would be willing. And of course, take your suggestions as well, really brilliant. But I'd like to go to the second biggest economy in the world, China, especially post-pandemic realities. We've been touching on this and just following up on how they've been able to recover post-pandemic. And just only recently, they said they'd stop releasing youth unemployment figures. Why? Because it recently hit its highest
like
record,
Nigeria.
over 20%. Exactly. I was
Where's
going to go
unemployment numbers
back to
in Nigeria?
Nigeria's
and
is
responses-
54%.
Well, that's speculative.
That's speculative.
Because we
Yeah.
don't have official figures yet.
Right.
And just as a number of people have said, by closing your eyes or burying your head in the sand will not make the problem go away. By not releasing figures will not let the problem go away. It's important to know that these are urban figures, so 16 to 24-year-olds in the urban area. They don't capture rural unemployment figures for young people in China. But again, just to look at the property sector down, unemployment rate high. How are they going to recover, post-pandemic? We're looking, and what analysts are saying is that they might slip into a recession. They're concerned about China slipping into a recession if they don't, do more in terms of policy. You've talked about cutting interest rates, but they're talking about even more for the economy to recover post-pandemic. Just to point that out.
Okay, talking about China. China is in deflation as prices are falling. The property market is severely hit. And then also unemployment rate is very high. China started reporting unemployment figures in 2018. But now they say, well, the formula we're using is not working, we'll not report it again. So the assumption by the Office of Statistics, is simply that, well, if you don't report the figure, then unemployment does not exist. But the bigger question with, China is the same question that you have always raised, Rotus, that will China accelerate stimulus and what will be the effect of, catalyzing stimulus. But I think that they're trying to be very cautious. Yeah. The post-pandemic recovery has not, been as positive as they thought. Now, you mentioned Japan. Let's go to Japan. Japan has reported the expansion in GDP growth more than expected, 1.8. The prediction by economists was that they will get about 0.8. Cumulatively, year on year, 6%. Okay? So everybody is surprised. But what is the explanation? My interest is in the explanation. The explanation is that the Japanese yen, is not doing so well, as falling. And because of that, it's easier for car makers from Japan to export.
Thank you, sir.
Now, what I saw there is that, look, there's something here about productivity.
Yes, sir. Yep.
If your, currency is a bit weak, but you are very productive, it may well translate into some advantages.
Exactly.
And that's why we keep saying that, look, in Nigeria, we may have many problems. But to jumpstart the economy, there must be productivity.
Amen.
But you people are using toothpick from Gambia. You are using toothpick from Ghana. Ordinary toothpick, you can't produce in Nigeria. And now comes, what's his name, Shonubi, the acting CBN governor. He says they are going to introduce a number of measures. Which measures are they introducing?
I just don't know.
The Naira has depreciated 16% since they started talking about harmonization of the forex market. You have made your own recommendations, Rotus. I hope they will listen. There's also a group called Agora Policy, which came up with some recommendations about how to steady the foreign exchange regime in Nigeria. I hope they will also listen to that, because what we're dealing with here really is a shortage of ideas. And it's important that, they listen to other people outside the system. It's not about the president saying he is concerned. What is he concerned about?
Right.
He should be concerned about the reality on the streets of Nigeria, whereby everything has gone, as Pastor Bakari was saying, on the downward slope. Now, another country you mentioned is Argentina.
Yes.
Now, the Central Bank of Argentina says they've had to increase adjust interest rate and also take some other measures in order to steady the market. Because your friend,
my friend.
The fact that he has suddenly emerged is making everybody to panic. In fact, he says he will scrap the Central Bank of Argentina. So the Central Bank of Argentina is looking for a way to protect itself. And inflation in that country is projected at about 142%.
God.
One of the highest in the world.
Yeah.
So if you have inflation 142% and you have a right-winger that is increasingly popular, riding on the wave of popular discontent.
Yes.
So the central bank will say, before this man gets there, let's take some measures to stop him. But Javier Milei may well just be driven by sheer populism. As you said, he's an economist. You mentioned India. Today is the 77th independence anniversary of India. So we would like to congratulate the proud people of India on the occasion of their 77th independence anniversary. Fourth largest economy.
And growing.
Likely to be third largest economy. The fastest growing economy in the world. The biggest tech hub in the world. What I don't agree with is the crony capitalism of India, promoted by the
Mr. Modi,
by Narendra Modi. Well,
India was not growing this way until Modi came. So leadership matters.
Leadership matters.
Leadership matters.
It's also crony capitalism.
It's
not like you don't have crony capitalism in Nigeria.
It's not only the type that you have in Nigeria is the very.
It's another level.
It's driven by nepotism and greed.
It's still crony capitalism.
That's another subject for another day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.